Hey everybody, good to be back here with you for ThinkScript. My name is Mike Fairborn. Looking forward to a discussion today, folks. We had an interesting discussion last week as we talked about some of the market forecast indications, and I got a little bit of follow-up on that. Maybe to even a more rare indication that we get on the market forecast, which ultimately is the bearish and the bullish clusters. I want to go into that today because that ties in not just that intermediate term time frame that we talked about in previous week or last week, which mirrors a longer term time frame, folks. This would look at the shorter term, the near term lines combined all together. So that could fit actually more uniquely with, let's say, a swing trade type time frame. That is one that we haven't looked at yet, but I've been working on that this week and looking forward to showing that with you. Showing some really interesting stuff on it, by the way. Maybe you'll see this see things the same way. Welcome to all of you here. We've got let's see, David, Chris B, Riceberg, BJ. We've got Harlet 3000 as well as Bo. Great to have you all on board, folks. Questions, comments, throw those in the chat so we can address those. We have Mr. James Boyd in the chat, folks. You'll see him as JB listed there. I do some of the chats for James. And they do give me, I do see the JB chant starting. So I'll know if he's made it if I start to see that in his own chat here as he's doing chat. But on that note, great to have him on board. Very knowledgeable on this topic and others. And I appreciate James filling in prior weeks for me in this class. Just did a great job on it. Couldn't thank him enough. All right, well, on that, let's go ahead and start off with some disclosures to get the show on the road. Information here is for general information purposes only. And the paper money software application is for education purposes only. Investing involves risk, including for some products more than your initial investment. Past performance of any security strategy does not guarantee future results or success. All investing involves risk. Keep that in mind, including for some products more than your initial investment. Past performance of any security does not guarantee future results. There is a little note there too on futures. We do tap into futures just simply looking at the charts and getting a read sometimes on volume. So that is what we might end up doing. A quick note too, for those of you that are joining us for the first time, what is ThinkScripting? I recognize all your names here that I did see in the chat, but for those of you that are new, we do use some coding that's built into the thinkorswim platform. And that coding enables us to identify different scenarios, different indicators or custom indicators that we may have built to help us give us signs of maybe stock prices potentially being ready to move up or down. It can do all kinds of different things. It can give us drawings. We took a look at one last week, a drawing tool right on charts as well. Today I'm going to look at specifically a custom column, but these are the steps to ThinkScripting that I wanted everybody just to be mindful of. One thing I always do, I tend to note when I look at this slide is that always be mindful, how well indicators, specific indicators that are already designed to do something, how well they could fit into a goal and making ThinkScript meet that goal. Because if it is an indicator that's out there, it's going to function normally the way it should. And we're just using ThinkScript to say, give me buy and sell signals in a visual, a chart format, a market watch format, or even a scan format where I can scan the whole universe of stocks to find a particular setup. And we've even gone as far as using like price patterns, flag patterns as well, which is not an indicator, but we can also, we can look at candlestick patterns and price data formations as well. So it's a pretty advanced script. You can go pretty far, but it's actually pretty simple too. So it's a combination of a couple of great things that it does provide us. But within this too, we do outline the steps to a script. We apply those ThinkScript tools. We write custom scripts. And finally, at the end, I'm going to share that link. All right. One time I forgot to share that link, and I don't ever want to do that again. I got a lot of people upset. They had to wait a little while before I got that approved to be sent out again through compliance. So I've stopped doing that, but there we go. All right. Well, let's take a look at just a brief overview of the markets. You guys have seen probably enough of the markets. We've got another class at the very end here that one more class after this, the market movers, I believe, that addresses the weekend discussion of the markets. A quick note too, not this coming week, but the week after, this class will be moving to Thursday. So mark that on the calendar. In fact, the last class of the day on Friday would be this for this time slot, and that's going to be the market movers class. Okay, so we're just moving to Thursday, not next week, but the week after. Okay, so with that, a quick look. Oh, that's not the markets. That is AMD. I had up last, but that is the market over here. You can see us sitting over here at this level, just kind of going sideways. You guys know in this class, I do like to reference futures, at least in terms of volume. And one of the key things I wanted to note over here, looking at the money flow, which we've done some ThinkScripts on. Just a quick note, will we go up or will we go down? A lot of times we can look and see what the money's doing. You see it's kind of coming down a little bit over here? It's on the futures, and that doesn't always connect perfectly to the S&P 500, but the two are, they're they're very closely related. They are based upon the same 500 or so companies, right, that make up that group. It's the S&P 500 futures relative to the S&P 500 index. I just noticed that. I thought I'd bring that up to you guys. That's something I hadn't seen. We'd really been holding up quite well, but more recently dipping a little bit. It wasn't a bad move coming up for sure, but we'll just see, what that entails going forward. All right. Well, last week, Chris says, hey, what are we losing on Thursday? That is I don't know if we're losing it. It might be repositioned to getting started with stock investing. Great class that Kevin teaches. In fact, I normally do chat during that hour for him. That's how I know. But getting started with stock investing, which I think is, I don't know where it might be fit in somewhere. In fact, I think it is. It's not going anywhere. So keep that in mind. But there is that one section that is being shifted. You're right. So a little bit earlier on a Friday. All right, everybody. Well, let's do this. I'm going to start off with just any stock. How about we'll just use an example here of Apple. There is Apple. Apple's been down for a little bit. Got a couple of different lines on here too. But the one thing I wanted to note on Apple and what we really talked about last week, we're using cycles. And we talked about that longer term cycle. That cycle, folks, was that proprietary indicator that we have. And I'm going to get that just by typing in market F. Abbreviation for market forecast right there. A quick note on market forecast. I'll click on this. Just to recap, this is the key point that we really didn't get into too much. We looked at really the monthly cycle, and it is rare to see those monthly cycles kick in just because we're looking at longer time frames. We looked at that on the intermediate trend line last week, but it can be so valuable to tie in momentum, near term, and intermediate. And these are really related to the daily, weekly, and monthly cycles. Now, one of the cool things is, as I showed you guys last week, although I didn't have a script built for it, what about when we're getting all three of those combined together? I'm not sure we're going to get one on Apple. I'm going to clear this off for now because we need to save some room. But I'm going to go to the market. Well, I'm actually just going to add it in. Market forecast right now. Let's put that in, and I'm just going to change these colors a little bit so we can see them a little bit better. I'm not going to change them. Let's just make them a little thicker, every one of them. And the intermediate term line, I'll put to a 3 width. So there it is right there off the bottom, okay? And hopefully you can see that. We were looking at last week, specifically that monthly, when it comes below 20 and starts to break above. And 20 is really the key point right there. 20 is the big one. Right. And a lot of times, and according to the way a lot of traders will use this, right, that's what they're using on the market forecast. There can be other approaches, but look at this. So you go below 20 right here. When you rise above that 20, we were looking at these longer terms. Just to recap, because we are building on this. Now, what's interesting here is that was a fairly large pullback that did make let's make note of it. That is a new low. That's new. Okay, that's a new low right there. So the trend could be down, but it still gave us, even though that made a new low and the trend could be shifting lower, which it did, we still got a rally out of it. You'll find it fascinating too that a lot of these just barely dip down below that 20. In fact, let's clear this off, get it nice and clean. It's longer term. Again, these are monthly type cycles. Just giving us indications. And we use these a lot of times on the S&P 500 is what we're really looking at. Okay, now with this too, we also said you can get the pullbacks dropping below 80. So up or down, I'm going to try to line that up better. But right there, actually, when we broke this trend line roughly, that upward sloping trend line, market forecast gave us a second indication. So that is a ×2 indication right there, right? The trend line break, it's another totally unique indication on the chart, change of the slope, the strength of the trend, plus the market forecast dipping below 80 right there. We talked about multiple indications. Traders will use that to try to improve the potential for success going forward. But that is monthly. Now I'm going to clear this all off because this does give me the best whiteboard in the world. I guess it's a blackboard in this case, since I've changed to the black codes. But let's do this. So we've got the longer term cycles, right? We are talking about cycles, and there's a cyclical nature to a lot of different stocks and to the market. Do these cycles change over time? Yes, they do. But there are price cycles. And sometimes if the trend is up, that cycle, folks, can be like this. In other words, this could all be shifted to the upside a little bit. In other words, you could be getting higher highs and higher lows, but this is like a monthly time frame. That is that intermediate term line that we had on there, that green line that we just looked at. That's showing long term, clearly. Now, I'm going to use what's referred to as the near term line, or let's say the weekly. Now, the weekly, you'd basically be getting a number of additional cycles in here to match this time, okay? And you guys picked up on this last week. I had some pretty good feedback on it. But the whole idea here is tracking those when maybe both of them start to go up at the same time. Right there, right? Well, these were both kind of moving up. That is where we may get the biggest price strength. Now, keep in mind, this is what the MF for short does. Market forecast. If I'm writing this out on my mouse, I'm going to be all over the place. The market forecast, it's looking at those cycles using that proprietary indicator to help us spot those. We just had one last week. Okay, we've got one more to plot in here, and it's something like this. I mean, it's just like, this is the near term. This is like the daily chart. It's all over the place. You can see, oh, I'll just finish this off. But there are a number of cycles that can occur within here. And if I could just explain this real quick, this is the way I interpret this. Let's say there's a blue line coming up right here, right? That is that's maybe the strength of possibly our longer term trend, something like this. So let's just say, we're trending up on the chart. Now, when we pull back a little bit, that is where maybe, the long-term trend's still up, but maybe that short-term and intermediate-term lines, right, are dipping back down. And what that's simply going to be is like the flag portion of the move, the trend. We circle back up because why? Well, because our monthly is still in check. We're still on that continuation of the upward move, potentially, right? This is what we're looking at. And another cycle comes in, we come back down. And we dip back up, and then we continue with that upward move. And what does that look like? It looks like an upward trend with a continuation of counter trend moves that are going to match the intermediate and the short-term lines as well on the pullback. And I could have put in here like yellow as well. Maybe yellow's dipping and the red as well. But those are the pullbacks to match the shorter-term cycle in the direction of the longer-term trend. Now you're kind of getting a sense of how these cycles can work. And the whole idea here is to get in the long-term side. But what is really fascinating is what tends to happen when everything lines up together. This is referred to as the cluster of the move. They refer to it as the market forecast cluster. The cluster occurs, and this is even more rare when this happens. You have to be, we'll look at bullish and bearish because the indicator that I've been building this week looks at both. The bearish cluster right there, that is below 20, less than 20. And what has to happen to get that cluster is we need all three lines to touch below that level. You see, that's the only way we can really try to piece all those different time frames together is when they touch at an oversold level. That may mean the bottom of the cycle. You know where that happened? Right there. We did get that. I just chose Apple as an example right there. You see how all three, I'm going to zoom in like big time on that level and show you guys right now. This one is a hard one to find, but Let's just draw a line through here. I mean, imagine going through 500 stocks or whatever we're looking at and just looking for this. That's tricky. Do you see how they all cross at the same time? They're all below 20. Let's highlight that in yellow or blue, whatever. Here we go. Right there. It just so happened that was right at that point in time. So all cycles were there. Does it have to work out? No. But like I said, we're trying to build on more and more potential evidence that price is ready to take off on all those time frames, and we can kind of look at it from there. But you'll notice over here with me as we just talked about this. Okay, so here is that base, and let's just see if we can follow along with this. Now, this trend, Apple is actually one of the weakest ones, and that's why I wanted to do it, to kind of stress test this indicator a little bit, because Apple didn't go up like some of these others have gone up. Microsoft, we'll look at that one next, but let's say Apple. Look at this. The trend, the longer-term trend, it's still up to sideways, right? Look at the green line. It still went up. But in between that time frame, look at our red and blue lines. See how they're coming down? Flag pattern, clear flag pattern right there. Very clear. I'm looking at red and blue, near term and momentum lines. Pull back. Now we'll look at it on Microsoft. And then I'm going to show you one that's happening right now because we've got a script to help us with this. Okay, over here, cluster. Huge cluster right there. Okay, there's your cluster. See the green line? The longer term cycle we were talking about. Do you see it? Now look at some of the pullbacks you had in here. Look how often that red line comes down. Pretty frequently, and that's very, very short term, but those could also be interesting entry points. Our key focus today, folks, is this right there in terms of a bullish, but what about a bearish? What about when we get a cluster not below 20? Let's use this one. We'll use a red line up top here. A cluster above 80. We've got a script today that looks for both. And believe me, we're getting more of these right now. And all this is saying on the bearish side, we did not get, that is not right there. That is not a cluster right there. That is not a cluster. We had two lines cross, but the near-term line, momentum line, intermediate term lines hit, but the near-term line did not touch. That's the key point. Okay. So this indicator, though, when we look at it, we can't do normal think scripting with it. The good thing is I can't look inside and see what's going on because it's a proprietary indicator. If I click on it right here, what does it tell us? Source code isn't available, right? So they've got their arms around this one. They're not going to let that one out of the box, but we can still tap into it because we can just use these terms right here to help us out. And that's exactly what we did on the clusters. It just took a little bit longer. It's a little bit more tricky to get them all touching. And so what I looked at, let me just throw a couple of these out. VTR. This is one that pulled up by itself. I'm sorry, that's just V. VTR is one. That's, by the way, that's Visa. No cluster on the upside there. Here's VTR. They all touched below 20 right here. Take a look at this. This is interesting. Do you see, just visually looking at this? Anybody see this potential cycle? Take a look. Let me draw it. And tell me if that maps out the green line down below. All I did was draw price, but it's over months. These are months. These are months. I guess you don't need me to tell you that. You can see them at the bottom. These are months, though, down below each of these sections, and you can see it moving within that time frame. Let's clear that off. And this is actually in a very, all else being equal, it's a longer term upward trend. We're kind of at a consolidation. I don't know if we're like down in here, but I can tell you right now that we did get a cluster that hit right there. Now, you can say, well, Mike, that's not true because look at the near-term line, momentum line, red, and the blue line. You say, what are you talking about? They're up there. What I'm talking about is that point right there where they hit, right? Just below 20, almost right at 20 actually. But that's where they're all lined up. And you can take a look at that and say, well, that's interesting. I mean, that did line up. And so what we had to do is we've got something referred to as that look back period. And this indicator is going to help us with the look back. I mean, the script is we've got it set up, but we're looking at the way I have it right now. You guys could change this. It's just like a 5-day, within 5 days. So the cluster happened within 5 days. Notice we're not getting anything yet. Short-term line's already coming up, but the longer-term line is actually still pointing down. It could still consolidate. All right, and there you have it. You had a cluster right down here too. See how it came a little bit earlier? A little bit early, but you didn't get actually above 20. So let me ask you this, you guys. What would you say if you get a cluster? What could be the potential entry signal? I'm going to tap into last week's discussion based upon what we talked about last week. What could we be waiting for next? Let's say it clusters at the bottom. What could be the next thing? Just using market forecast only is the actual signal for the paper entry. What would be that entry signal? Just based on that. Any thoughts? I'll let you guys think about that one for a second, because that's why we can use last week's discussion as well. Tied in with this a little bit. Chris, you got it. That's exactly it. Waiting for that intermediate term line to get back up above, right? Short term hasn't really begun yet. You're waiting for kind of the turn here. If I did, okay, so just using that same point there that was brought up, look at this, straight up. Okay, so it's not the very bottom, but at least it's showing, it's dang close though, right? I mean, these are going to vary from time to time, but there you go. So that's exactly it. You got it, David? And you can use other signals too, for sure, for sure. You can use, I mean, something that, JB uses a lot, the Caholds. He's like, he's done a lot of those, and he's got scripts for those himself. Those are really fascinating too, and they might occur right after the cluster too. I mean, there's a number of different ways, but I think the market forecast could be interesting too long term. Now, remember last week we said, hey, when we were looking at that long-term line crossing up, well, you've got one in here. A lot of times we were saying that you might get 3 of those a year. This one you might get 1 cluster a year, a cluster. And by the way, I'm talking about bullish. Maybe you get a couple because you might get a bearish. I think we got a bearish over here. We did. No, we didn't. We got a cluster over here, but guess what happened? It never went below the 80 on this case. Remember how the market forecast, we said stay into it till it goes below 80? That pretty much highlights exactly our discussion as to why you would, you might wait for a market forecast signal. Because look at that. I mean, there's your cluster. Do you get out right? I mean, do you get out of that cluster? Oh my gosh. It was showing incredible strength. You probably had more strength over here that occurred first, but this was like round 2, I guess, or the second leg or to the upside or whatever, because when you ran up here, the intermediate term line says, no, do not touch it. It is not showing any indications. Now, right here, a different story. And by the way, did we cluster here? No, I think we got dang close about right over here, though. But I can say that we dipped on the 80 and we went flat, and then we dipped again on the 80 and we went down. So this ties in really nicely to last week's discussion. But that is VTR one that's coming up right now. And the one I did today is right over here. I did it into a market watch column. So let me set this up. We can look at it I wanted to look at both. I wanted to do one that has the MF clusters on both, just market forecast clusters. And this is all it's going to show. Bearish cluster, bullish cluster within 5 days. Let's start off with the NASDAQ, and let's take a look at some of these right now. So there you go. I want to look at the bullish ones first. And what are we seeing over here? We're seeing some clusters occurring in the Staples area, Kraft Heinz, Keurig, for sure, as well as is in that area. And by the way, Monster, interesting, is kind of a bearish right now. Again, it's a wake-up call saying, hey, maybe keep an eye on this. Maybe it's not ready to come down. We just saw that those can be bullish till the longer term maybe comes down, or other indications. But let's take a look at the CPRT. and then we'll look at all three of these. There are more obviously in the S&P 500. CPRT. There you go. Okay. Big sell-off here. Let's take a look and just see what we can spot from this. I can easily pick up on that longer-term cycle. I think you guys probably can as well. Now, they did have earnings. It looks like earnings disappointed. Yeah, 42 cents. They came in at 42. They just hit estimates. Maybe the expectation, well, maybe they anticipated a higher number or they guided lower, whatever the case might be. The one thing I'll say with CPRT on this, and by the way, market forecast, is it ready? No, it's really pointing down. By the way, it can only go to 0. We're getting darn close to 0 right now. We're at 2. Can this company hold up? I mean, what did they say in earnings? Obviously, it dipped, but I will say this, long term, what do you see there? Well, that's that big round number. Well, it's 50. Sometimes 50 in these longer term levels can be indications of longer term support. So perhaps you could see that there occurring, right? You got a good cluster right there too. Just as you were kind of basing down. Where did the signal come in on this last one? About right there. Just off those bottoms, right? Cluster off those bottoms. Okay. We had Kraft Heinz HC as well. Within 5 days, you could see it right there. Now that's been downward trending. Okay, but that is truly all those time frames. So will it cycle back up? Now we get to wait and see. In fact, on something like this that stands out so clear, the one thing that we don't have, just taking a look at the price patterns now, lower low, lower low, lower low, lower low. The one thing that would be fascinating here is just, how about we just get a higher low? If this pulls back, that could be a higher low. That could be interesting because there is some resistance right here. Maybe an alert right there, which I would want to know because maybe that would be something I could look at for a class coming up. But let's see, breakout, question mark. Okay. We could also use another one here that I know many of you guys do use, and that would be a downward sloping trend line, which is going to be very, very close to that level or just above it. But there's your trend line, right click, create alert, withdrawing, you got it. But by the way, you always have to flip this to an at or above, well, above the channel. So now we're using the price tools to give us an alert, but everything is based on something that might happen maybe once or twice a year, right? At least off the bottoms on the bullish side. We're just looking at bullish right now. Okay, so I'm just going to say this again as well, question mark. I'm going to have that text me. Again, we can set that up and set up application settings so that you can get your emails or your text messages in there by notifications. It's about a 3 to 5 second alert from me. I can have an alert sitting out there for 2-3 years. Once it gets hit, I'm notified within 3 to 5 seconds. It's been my experience. All right. What else did we have? We had not there. We had Dr. Pepper, KDP. KDP. Right there. Oh, beautiful. See it? They all three hit. The code is remarkably easy because we're using an indicator. So it's going to be very, very short. But look at that right there. What are we seeing with this chart? It is a nice little pop there, right there. Okay, so potential change in trend, a little bit of a consolidation. Here we go. So you break out, down, up. Think about long-term cycle, weekly, short-term. Could we be setting up right there? According to the indicator, it's saying yes. And nothing's 100%, but it is saying yes. There could be something to be mindful of here. And by the way, the green line is maybe going to do one of those where it dips below 20 and spikes just above, because we are right now darn close to that 20 level. I'd have to say, I mean, we're right there near 20. Yeah, right at it. Well, yeah, 20. And so what about this? As a defensive play. So sideways, here you go. There appears to be some sort of support right through there, but you are sideways. Could we be on the verge of, and this is why I like this cluster, because I do look at, and I do, teach a class on swing trading, because you really want to try to find, I think a lot of traders are this way. It's this spike you're looking for. To get that spike, think about it. Every one of those has to be in line. You want the short term, the midterm, and the long term all going higher. Isn't that where the spikes come in? When they all line up? So that, I think, is kind of the flag according to market forecast. If it were to determine it, it's using cycles to say that's what we're looking for right there. All right. Now that's that. Oh, okay. So Ken had one, huh? Interesting. Did he have a well, that's good to know. He had a, oh, it plots the dots. That's the thing. And I was thinking about using Christopher Allenby's concept on that to have like the market forecast where it gives us the clouds. And that's something that could be done. I could actually have that done next week. Let's move back over here. Did he have the market forecast though, over let's say a 5-day time frame? That's the one that I got a lot of feedback on, so I didn't know about that, and evidently a lot of people didn't. But anyways, that could fit in here. Additional entry signals, but good to know. Break above the last high. Yep. A lot of those too. A lot of these, I think, because they have been low, you could wait for a break above the high. Oh yeah, I'll show you that, Bo. Yeah, just give me 1 second. I'll highlight that for sure. Just do this, a quick note on these bearish clusters, but I will point that out real quick. Let's just take a look at one of these and then I'll show you that. We can take a look at some other ones as well. So let's look at Monster, which has been really quite strong. I know previously. MNST. Okay, so that's a pretty big run up there. You can see we touched above 80, all three lines clustered right there, right at this point. Now, you can't argue with this trend. And what did we just say about the market forecast? Yeah, you might not want to mess with it when it's above 80. In fact, that's how traders will use this. Many of them will use the market forecast intermediate term like we talked about last week. Until you break below that level, don't mess with it. As a matter of fact, when the trends are this strong to the upside, you might want to honestly wait too. I mean, let's just tie in an additional point. It was kind of brought up in the chat a little bit, but what about this? Lower low and lower high. Or even this. What about a lower high? And then you start to get the indications like we saw earlier on Microsoft. So in other words, we get a lower high and then boom, the market forecast simultaneously or within a couple of days breaks that 80. That could be your ×2 indicator right there. Just using still highlighting market forecast. That could be a consideration. Okay, so let's do this. I'm going to go back and show you all this one. Ooh, I got a lot of screens up. All right, let's go back again. No, that won't work. Just trying to get at the playlist here. Okay, and I do have that playlist. So let's do that right now. I'll show you where that was at. This is last week's discussion, building on that market forecast, intermediate line. Here, I'll send this out and then I'll put it in the chat. And then what you guys could do is just, or specifically Bo, what you could do is go down to look at the gaps. Right there. 3 gap codes that everyone should, well, that's what I put, everyone should have. That was actually done at the last presentation day for this class in March using gaps. But there's the playlist right there for you, Bo, so that should help get you going. Okay, cool. All right. Oh, yeah, I've got to provide that scan. Sorry, get rolling on that. Let's right-click on this, and I'll edit that formula. In fact, I can pull it up right now, and we can actually take a quick peek at it. As we're taking a peek, let me share it. Remember, you want to rename it. I think it will come out. No, I think you have to rename it. I've done so many of these that. There you go, right there. And so that one right there, Wiley, was that for the charts? Just out of curiosity, I think that I saw that mentioned earlier because I'd like to take a look at that one too. These are a little bit different. looking at clusters. By the way, I've got the look back bars up top. So if you wanted to do something really, really short term, let me tell you a really short term one you could look at right there. One day. It's happening now. I mean, I think five's better though, because it can drag along the bottom and the top, but you might not get as many signals, but at least you'll find a cluster as it's happening here. Okay. Yeah, we can spend a whole session too going through and looking and just talking about the logic here. As we build out a bullish cluster and a bearish cluster, what they have to do below different time frames, or different levels, 80 and the 20. This logic is something that's somewhat interesting in terms of, as you get your cluster, you're looking at the sum of these two, and they have to be greater than 0 to get that indication, right? So you got to have a look back bar. That's got to meet. It's got to be either bullish or bearish. That's the definition of the logic. Then we have the labels coming in. But you guys, yeah, there you have it. And that is a good find. Let's see. I'll have to check it out. It might be for the charts, the one that Wiley had sent through. I'm not 100% on it. Oh, chart indicators. Okay. So good catch, though. Thank you for that. I don't know where you found that. That must be a little bit older one, because I'm familiar with a lot of Ken's stuff, but not that one. Thank you. All right. Let's see. What else do we have? CTAS, bearish clusters. CTAS. Okay. So looking strong, CTAS, and I believe, if I'm not mistaken, this is well, let's see. This is in another group of stocks, right? Okay. So you got a resistance level long term. First thing I'm taking a look at right there. Check. We might, what happens over here? Last time we were here, yeah, we had a little bit of a dip, right? That was a dip. I'm going to go ahead and give us a little bit more to look at by using the same market forecast. And by the way, you guys, when you get that, you guys know what to do. You can come up top, go into setup. Yeah, when you have it, open shared items, click in it here, right? And then preview. Rename that to whatever you want. I just have MF clusters. Clusters meaning bullish or bearish on top of this. And I'm going to go down here. I'm going to click on S&P 500. This might take a little bit longer. And you can see how they did over a 5-day. And by the way, how are they doing today? Right there. Look at that one. How are they doing today, folks? So it had a cluster, a bearish cluster within the last 5 days, and you're down. HUBB or JCI. Let's take a look at those ones. That's giving us a price indication without having to pull up the chart. There you go. Okay, what do you see here on JCI? I don't know why I do this, but every single time I look over here, just see, is it around a big number? Yeah, a lot of times, I don't know if you guys have seen this. I'm sure many of you have, because I know you guys have been in the market for a long time. But if you get into that 100, the century mark, sometimes you find resistance up here. And I don't know, maybe you come down, maybe not. One of them that did pop up over here just caught my attention. And to the bullish side, I want to see this STZ, which is Distillers and Vintners Wine Company. And that falls into that defensive category. And if there was a rotation in the market, we could see a rotation into, well, we already saw some of the staples, right? And this might actually fall in the staple. There you have it. So you have the Keurig down here as well. Actually, even United Healthcare. Wow. Now that one's been down. That might just be a fun one to look at, because that one has been down so much. But STZ right here. Oh, there's your Copart too. So yeah, there's an overlap there in Copart. But STZ, by the way, look at this. Clorox, Campbell's. Looking for the staples. We could have a sector column in here too if we want to spot potential sector rotations using the market forecast cluster. But I want to take a look at STZ right now. This is bullish off the bottom. Okay. Yeah. Okay, so we see that. Let's look at a weekly chart here. There is some indications that you're seeing a longer term weekly levels down here. The last time we bounced off that level was a pretty good move. We broke up above it here. That was, COVID. So that's kind of like, ignore that. But aside, well, it was kind of unusual, right? But those are some big bounces there. We don't know what we're going to get right here at this point in time, but What we can say is there has been a little bit of a consolidation. I don't know what's going on with this fundamentally, but this is almost like, if I'm not mistaken, and I was looking for this right here, an island bottom or a saucer. It's got a bit of a saucer look to it, a saucer bottom. We'll see if that happens. The saucer, a lot of times, it didn't round as much, but notice the one thing we're saying, higher low, well, higher low, and higher highs. So it could be developing that trend. That's interesting. So it's just what I'm doing, because as I'm using this on top of everything else, so this highlights it for me and says, hey, this might not happen very often at all, but when it does, I might want to know about it. We actually did get a cluster right here at that bottom too. But the key thing was, this is a great way to use that market forecast. Like we said, using that 80 line right there. How many clusters do we get off the bottom? I think 1, 2, 3, 4, perhaps 5, 6, 7. But when did we actually get the signal? Not till it got above 20 on the bullish side. Get that going right there. Did it hold up? It really did. I mean, it wasn't a strong move, but that moved from, about 30 points or so off that bottom. And it's still consolidating, and now we're getting another one. So what are we going to do? Well, I mean, what can you do? You can wait for the 20 is what I'm getting at there. I mean, that's just based on everything we had last week. Okay, let's see. There we go. All right, you guys. Well, that went fast. I just looked down. Okay, so we're just about out of time here, but where's the script for the Market Watch Comp? David, let me post that again. Let's just, I think it was right up here. Yeah, it was this one. Do you see it? It was just above Wiley's post. James had a couple. So scroll up on the chat. Are you seeing that on the chat right there? Let me see if I can repost that guy. Copy link address, and I'll just put it down so you all have the same one. Should be, I'm sorry, that was the playlist. My bad. I'm sorry. Wrong one. It was right here. Now I got it. That's the playlist, but there is the script right there. When I shared it. I'll just share it again. Hang on. Copy and paste. That working? Yeah. So here is the script I'll just make it all, so you can see it clearly. Market Watch. MF stands for Market Forecast Clusters. Boom. Okay, you got it. All right, guys. Well, I think this is really cool because I think we've had a couple of classes now, and I really love to build on the concept of the cycle because that can help us get a better concept of the change of the trend, which we tied into later. Remember, everything else we tied into this, and you guys had some great points too. What are the indicators looking at? What are the other indicators? What are the moving averages showing? That's another indication of trends. There was one in here posted, maybe Chris did it or somebody else did, but it's the change there, shorter term, longer term crossover moving averages. It's another way to get a sense of what is that trend looking like. And this is just simply showing at a bottom range, those cycles are all coming together. From that point on, shoot, we can add in additional indicators. Okay, got it. Yeah, so I figured that, Sergeant Chuck, yeah, you've got, I think it's beer, distillers, right? And others. Thanks for that. As we're looking at Constellation Brands right now. All right, you guys. Well, we built on it and took a look at the feedback from last week. Hopefully we found this taking us to that point. I did like this as opposed to the scan because this shows us specifically on the Market Watch tab, bullish or bearish specifically. You guys have that at your fingertips now. It should work out okay. You can change the colors. We talked about how to do that if you have the white background, but you're still getting to get red or green. With that, should you have to change the time frames. Folks, if you're getting value out of these discussions, do me a favor and smash that, crush that like button. Also, love to have you subscribe if you're not already. I know many of you are, and we love to have you on board. But if you're not, maybe consider that too. But smash that like button, hit the subscribe. I didn't see a survey today. Thanks so much, as always, to JB, who's done a fantastic job, and appreciate him filling in for the classes that he's done in the past. And hey, you guys, it's Friday. Have a fantastic weekend. Thanks to guys behind the scenes here helping us on the production team as well. Always great work. We'll see you all next time. Take care, all.